Hello and welcome. In the infinite expanse of the multiverse, where chaos and law wage their eternal struggle, one truth remains unshakable. Every 289 years, without fail, the gears of Mechanus align in a pattern so precise that reality itself takes notice. Millions of geometric beings emerge from their mechanical home and begin a journey that defies explanation, crossing through planes where chaos reigns and order crumbles. This is not migration. This is not war. This is the great Modron march, and understanding it means understanding the very nature of law itself. You find yourself drawn to this mystery because the march represents something profound. It is clockwork made manifest, inevitability given form, and the ultimate expression of a cosmos that functions according to rules so absolute that even the gods must acknowledge their power. But before you can comprehend why Modrons march, you must first understand what Modrons are, where they come from, and the impossible plane that births them into existence. Mechanus exists as the ultimate expression of law in the Great Wheel cosmology. Unlike other planes that contain elements of chaos or neutrality, Mechanus is pure. It is order distilled into physical form, a place where every action has a predetermined consequence, and every consequence leads to another predetermined action. The plane itself appears as an infinite expanse of interlocking gears, each one perfectly meshed with countless others, turning in synchronization that has never faltered since the beginning of time itself. These gears vary in size beyond mortal comprehension. Some are small enough to fit in your palm, their teeth precisely machined to mesh with slightly larger gears that connect to others in turn. But others stretch for miles, their surfaces vast enough to support entire civilizations, their teeth rising like mountain ranges that interlock with neighboring gears in a dance of mechanical perfection. The smallest gear you could perceive connects to something larger. The largest gear you could comprehend connects to something larger still. There is no beginning. There is no end. There is only the endless turning of cosmic machinery. The air in Mechanus, if you can call it air, hums with the sound of grinding gears. It is not unpleasant. In fact, visitors often describe it as soothing, a rhythm so constant and predictable that it becomes the heartbeat of the plane itself. You would hear the clicking of teeth meshing together, the whisper of metal sliding against metal with frictionless precision, and beneath it all, a deep thrumming vibration that suggests gears so massive their rotation takes centuries to complete a single turn. Light behaves differently here. It arrives from no particular source, but illuminates everything with perfect evenness, casting no shadows that would mar the clean lines of geometric perfection. This light reveals surfaces of brass, steel, iron, and metals that have no name in mortal languages. Some gears gleam with fresh polish, others show the patina of ages, but all function with identical perfection. Rust does not exist here. Entropy holds no power. Everything works exactly as designed, forever. The temperature remains constant throughout Mechanus. Not cold, not warm, but a perfect neutral point where comfort and discomfort become meaningless concepts. Gravity points toward the surface of whatever gear you stand upon, allowing beings to walk on the upper surface, the lower surface, or even the vertical teeth without any sense of disorientation. Direction becomes relative. Up and down lose meaning. Only forward and backward remain, measured not in distance, but in the number of gear teeth crossed. This is the clockwork universe, sometimes called nirvana by those who see perfection in its relentless order, or the land of cogs and gears by those who prefer more descriptive terms. It sits in the great wheel directly opposite limbo, the plane of pure chaos, as if the multiverse itself demands this balance between absolute order and complete disorder. From this plane of perfect order emerge the Modrons themselves. They are not born, not in any traditional sense. They do not reproduce through biological processes or magical rituals. Instead, when a Modron dies anywhere in the multiverse, its life force is absorbed back into the energy pool that permeates Mechanus. How new Modrons at the lowest rank are created remains a matter of some debate among planar scholars. Some accounts describe monodrones reproducing through fission, an existing monodrone splitting into two complete entities to replace lost members. Other sources suggest that new monodrones emerge directly from the energy pool itself when needed. What remains certain is that replacement happens, the hierarchy maintaining its numbers through processes as orderly as everything else in Mechanus. Each Modron appears as a geometric form given life. They are not creatures that resemble shapes. They are shapes that happen to be creatures. A sphere is not merely spherical in inspiration, but perfect spherical geometry made mobile. A cube does not approximate cubic shape, but embodies the mathematical precision of 6 equal squares joined at right angles. These are Platonic ideals rendered into solid matter, pure forms existing in a realm where perfection is not aspiration, but baseline reality. Their bodies consist of the same materials as Mechanus itself. Brass comprises most Modron forms, giving them a golden sheen that catches the even light of their home plane. But integration of iron, steel, copper, and other metals creates functional components. Hinges allow movement at precise angles. Gears within gears generate locomotion. Crystals serve as sensory organs, refracting light in ways that allow Modrons to perceive their surroundings with mathematical accuracy. Each component serves a purpose. Nothing exists for decoration or aesthetics. Form follows function with absolute fidelity. Modrons communicate through a language of clicks, whistles, and tones that sound mechanical to untrained ears. But this language carries far more information than any spoken tongue. A single click can convey an entire complex instruction. A whistle might contain a complete tactical assessment. Tones layer upon tones, creating harmonies that transmit data with perfect efficiency. When Modrons speak to each other, they exchange pure information, untainted by emotion, opinion, or interpretation. They state facts. They acknowledge facts. They act upon facts. The concept of small talk does not exist. Pleasantries serve no function. Every communication carries meaning. Every meaning drives action. Every action fulfills purpose. Emotion does not exist in Modrons as other beings understand it. A Modron cannot feel joy at success or disappointment at failure, because success and failure are simply data points indicating proper or improper function. It cannot experience fear because fear requires uncertainty about the future. And a Modron's future is determined by its programming and the commands of its superiors. It cannot know love or hate, friendship or enmity, pride or shame. These concepts have no meaning in a mind constructed entirely from law. But Modrons do possess something that could be called purpose. Each one understands its designated function with complete clarity. A Modron assigned to guard a location will stand at its post until commanded otherwise, or until its physical form deteriorates to the point of non-function. A Modron tasked with moving objects from point A to point B will continue this task endlessly, never questioning why the objects must be moved, never considering if a different approach might be more efficient. The command is absolute. The purpose is clear. Nothing else matters. The Modron hierarchy represents perfect organization made manifest. It is not a bureaucracy in the mortal sense, with its inefficiencies and redundancies. It is mathematical precision applied to social structure, creating a system where every Modron knows exactly where it stands and exactly what it must do. This hierarchy consists of multiple tiers divided into two main categories. The base Modrons form the foundation, numbering in the tens of millions, performing the actual labor that keeps Mechanus and the Modron operations functioning. The hierarch Modrons sit above them, fewer in number, but vastly more complex, serving as commanders, administrators, and the interface between the base Modrons and Primus itself. At the foundation of this hierarchy exist the monodrones. They appear as perfect spheres approximately 3 feet in diameter, their brass surfaces unbroken, except for a single eye mounted at the front, and small mechanical appendages that extend from various points on their bodies. These appendages allow for basic manipulation of objects and locomotion across the gears of Mechanus. Monodrones represent pure function, stripped of all complexity. They are single-function Modrons, capable of carrying out only one command at a time. If told to attack, a monodrone does so until slain or told to stop, even if that means attacking another monodrone after obliterating its original target. Tens of millions of monodrones exist throughout Mechanus, their combined efforts maintaining the smooth operation of their home plane. When you observe a monodrone at work, you see efficiency personified. It picks up an object, carries it to a designated location, sets it down with precise placement, then returns for another. No hesitation, no variation, no deviation. The same action repeated infinitely, each repetition identical to the last. Above the monodrones stand the duodrones, shaped as rectangular boxes or wedges. They possess two eyes instead of one, granting them superior perception. This additional sensory input allows them to coordinate the efforts of multiple monodrones, directing traffic among the spherical workers and ensuring that tasks are completed in proper sequence. Duodrones serve as the first level of management in the Modron hierarchy, transforming general orders from above into specific instructions for the monodrones beneath them. Where a monodrone can perform one task, a duodrone can oversee multiple monodrones performing multiple tasks simultaneously, ensuring their efforts complement rather than conflict with each other. The tridrones represent the third tier. They appear as triangular pyramids. Each face an equilateral triangle that meets at a central point. Three eyes grant them even greater perception, allowing them to monitor multiple work groups simultaneously. Tridrones coordinate the efforts of duodrones, creating higher-level organization that ensures different teams of workers do not interfere with each other while pursuing their respective tasks. They act as task coordinators, directing workflow with instinct-level responses. They begin to demonstrate the first traces of tactical thinking, though this thinking remains entirely deterministic and bound by strict protocols. Quadrons form the next level, appearing as cubic shapes with four eyes positioned to provide 360-degree vision. Their four-sided nature allows them to process more complex information and make more sophisticated decisions about resource allocation and task prioritization. A quadrone can perform 4 tasks at once, an evolutionary leap compared to the dual-tasking duodrone or the singular focus of the monodrone. It is this capacity that allows quadrones to oversee entire projects, command legions of lesser Modrons, and process battlefield tactics in real time. Unlike lower castes, which cease function if given contradictory orders. A quadrone can resolve ambiguities and identify logical paths forward. Although it will usually query such orders with its pentadrone superiors for clarification. Quadrones often serve as field commanders during the march, and they comprise the upper level of worker Modrons. In the Modron clockwork hierarchy, the quadrone serves as the bridge between the thinking and the reacting, the foreman of the gears. Pentadrones emerge as five-sided figures, pentagonal in basic form, with 5 eyes granting them near omnidirectional awareness. These Modrons handle large-scale logistics and strategic planning, coordinating the efforts of hundreds or thousands of lower-tier Modrons in complex operations. They are the highest rank among the base Modrons, standing at the threshold between worker and hierarch. Pentadrones serve as the police of the base population and as intermediaries between the base Modrons and the hierarch Modrons. They receive instructions passed down through the hierarchy and see that they are implemented by the quadrones, policing them as necessary. During the march, pentadrones serve as the primary interface between the Modron army and other planar inhabitants, though their communication style remains utterly alien to beings accustomed to social interaction that includes context and nuance. The hierarchy continues upward through increasingly complex forms, entering the realm of the hierarchs. Decaton Modrons possess 10 sides and 10 eyes, managing entire regions of Mechanus or commanding vast armies during the march. There are specific numbers associated with Decaton positions within Modron society. Each sector Decaton has a personal staff consisting of 5 pentadrones, 16 quadrones, 81 tridrones, 256 duodrones, and 1,728 monodrones, all reporting to their respective superiors in this chain of command. Each of the remaining 36 Decatons serves on the staff of one of the Modron armies. Nonotone Modrons take cylindrical forms and serve as commissars and chief inspectors. Each octon has a personal staff of 1 nonotone, who in turn commands 1 Decaton through the chain described above. Octon Modrons oversee multiple Decatons, creating layers of organization that allow the entire Modron race to function as a single unified entity. The realm of the Modrons occupies 64 of Mechanus's cog-like wheels within Regulus, and each is governed by an octon. These 64 sectors in turn are grouped into 4 sector regions, overseen by 16 quarton Modrons, and each group of 4 regions, called quarters, is supervised by one of the 4 secundus Modrons. This creates a pyramid of command and control where information flows upward and orders flow downward with perfect fidelity, each level translating broad strategy into increasingly specific tactics until individual monodrones receive instructions so precise they need only execute them without independent thought. At the pinnacle of this hierarchy, just below Primus itself, sit the Secundus Modrons. According to the traditional structure, there are 4 of these beings, each supervising a quarter of the Modron realm. They report directly to Primus and serve as its voice, will, and agents in the material operations of Modron society. When Primus communicates with the Modron race, it does so through the Secundus. When the Secundus require guidance on matters beyond their programming, they consult Primus. This relationship forms the critical link between the divine intellect of the Supreme Modron and the practical reality of maintaining order across Mechanus and beyond. The position of Secundus carries immense importance because of a unique property of Modron society. When a Modron of any rank dies, its life force is absorbed back into the energy pool, and a Modron from the next lower rank is immediately promoted to replace it. The promoted Modron transforms in a flash of light as it gains the physical form and mental capabilities of its new position. Getting promoted is based on nothing more than being the nearest Modron of the next lowest rank to whoever died. The promoted Modron is replaced by one of its underlings in the same manner, creating a cascade of promotions that ripples down through the hierarchy until the rank of monodrone is reached. At that lowest level, the replacement process occurs through the methods described earlier, whether fission or emergence from the energy pool. This means that if Primus itself were to die or become non-functional, one of the Secundus would immediately ascend to become the new Primus. The remaining Secundus would remain in their positions, while a Quartan ascended to fill the vacant Secundus slot, triggering the promotion cascade throughout the entire Modron race. Every Modron in existence would simultaneously advance one rank, their bodies transforming, their minds expanding to encompass new responsibilities, their purposes shifting to match their new stations. It is a system of perfect succession, eliminating any possibility of power vacuum or leadership crisis. The individual may change, but the position and its function remain constant. At the absolute apex of the Modron hierarchy exists Primus. This entity defies easy description because it embodies law so completely that attempting to understand it means grappling with law itself as a cosmic principle. Primus is not simply the leader of the Modrons. Based on how the hierarchy functions, with all Modron life force flowing through the energy pool that Primus inhabits, we can infer that Primus serves as the source from which all Modron existence flows, the template against which all order is measured. It resides at the center of Regulus, in a pool of energy at the heart of the largest cog in Mechanus. The great gears of Mechanus turn in reference to Primus's location. The Modron hierarchy extends downward from Primus's position. All order flows outward from this singular point of absolute law. Those few mortals who have claimed to perceive Primus describe a being that transcends geometry. Some accounts speak of a figure that appears as all shapes simultaneously, every Platonic solid occupying the same space at the same moment. Others describe a massive gear that is also a throne, or perhaps a throne made entirely of interlocking gears that grind against each other while producing no sound. Still others claim Primus appears as pure crystalline structure, facets catching and refracting light in patterns that encode the fundamental laws of reality itself. The truth may be that Primus exists in a state so perfectly ordered that mortal perception cannot process it accurately, each observer seeing only the aspects their limited minds can comprehend. Primus processes reality with a mind that functions according to principles mortals struggle to understand. Within what passes for consciousness in a being of pure law, Primus is said to maintain the orrery, a grand model of the multiverse that tracks the movements of planes, the actions of gods, the rise and fall of civilizations. This model, if it exists as described, would allow Primus to make decisions based not on incomplete information, but on comprehensive understanding of reality as it exists across multiple temporal and spatial dimensions. The relationship between Primus and the individual Modrons mirrors the relationship between a mind and its neurons. Each Modron is an individual unit capable of basic function, but that function gains meaning only through integration into the greater whole. But Primus is not omniscient. This is a crucial understanding. Despite its vast intellect and perfect processing of logical systems, Primus cannot predict chaos. The universe contains elements that defy logical analysis, beings whose actions emerge from free will rather than deterministic processes. This limitation, evident in the disruptions that chaos causes to modern operations, could imply that much of what Primus does is aimed at gathering data about the chaotic elements of reality. The Great Modron March itself may be an attempt to map the unmappable, to bring order to that which fundamentally resists order. Every 289 years, Primus reviews what information it has gathered, notes the changes that have occurred since the last march, and commands millions of Modrons to leave Mechanus and traverse the outer planes, observing everything they encounter, cataloging every deviation from expected patterns. The history of Primus contains at least one dark chapter that reveals both the strength and vulnerability of modern society. Centuries ago, the demon Lord Orcus was destroyed and reduced to an undead shade that called itself Tenebris. In this form, Tenebris gained access to the last word, an utterance so powerful it could destroy deities. Tenebris wielded this weapon against multiple gods in its quest to recover the wand of Orcus, the artifact needed to complete its resurrection. Among those slain was Primus itself. Tenebris invaded Mechanus, penetrated the energy pool, and spoke the last word, obliterating the supreme Modron. But rather than allowing a Secundus to ascend, Tenebris took Primus's place within the system, secretly controlling the entire Modron race without anyone realizing the deception. From this stolen position of power, Tenebris commanded an early Modron march, disrupting the 289-year cycle that had held constant throughout recorded history. This rogue march, occurring 189 years ahead of schedule, scoured the plains searching for the wand of Orcus, the Modrons unknowingly serving the very embodiment of chaos and evil. When Tenebris finally recovered the wand and completed its transformation back into Orcus, it simply abandoned the Modrons, leaving them leaderless and confused. Only then did the Secundus Modrons realize that Primus had been dead the entire time. One of them ascended to become the new Primus, triggering the cascade of promotions throughout the hierarchy. The transition, however, created complications that persist to this day. According to accounts of this period, one of the Secundus, tainted by exposure to Tenebris during its occupation of the energy pool, refused to accept its fellow's ascension. Instead of acknowledging the new Primus, this corrupted Secundus led a significant number of subordinate Modrons in an exodus from Mechanus, taking them to Acheron. This schism divided Modron power, leaving both factions weaker than the unified whole had been. The new Primus rules from Regulus, maintaining the traditional order, while the forces in Acheron remain a separate concern. Whether this division is permanent or temporary, whether reconciliation is possible, these questions remain unanswered. Understanding why Modrons exist requires grappling with the question of what law means in a cosmic context. Law is not merely rules written in books or decrees issued by rulers. At the fundamental level, law represents predictability. It is the principle that similar causes produce similar effects, that patterns repeat, that behavior can be anticipated based on past observation. Without law, reality would be pure chaos, every moment disconnected from the last, every action producing random results. The multiverse would be uninhabitable, existence itself impossible, because nothing could be relied upon to function consistently. Modrons serve as the maintainers and enforcers of this law. They do not impose it through force, though they can fight when necessary. Instead, they exemplify it through their existence. Every action a Modron takes reinforces the principle that order is possible, that systems can function predictably, that the universe operates according to rules rather than whim. When a monodrone picks up an object, and carries it to a designated location. It proves that cause and effect still function. When a pentadrone coordinates a complex operation involving thousands of lesser Modrons, it demonstrates that large-scale organization is achievable. The ultimate purpose of Modron existence may extend beyond simple demonstration. Some planar scholars theorize that Modrons actively stabilize reality through their presence. Their orderly nature, pushing back against the vast forces of chaos that constantly threaten to unravel the fabric of existence. The multiverse contains realms like the abyss, with its infinite layers of pure chaos, and limbo, where matter itself becomes negotiable. Against these forces, this theory suggests, the Modrons stand as a counterweight. Their existence says that law is possible, that order can prevail, that the universe need not descend into formless void. This creates an interesting paradox to consider. If Modrons exist to oppose chaos, then chaos must exist to give Modron existence meaning. Without disorder to contrast against, order becomes meaningless. A perfectly ordered universe with no variation, no unpredictability, no deviation from established patterns would be static. Perhaps based on how the march functions, Primus understands this. Perhaps the Great Modron March serves not only to map and study chaos, but to maintain the necessary balance that allows both law and disorder to coexist in productive tension. The march touches every outer plane, including those ruled by chaos, but it does not conquer them. It observes, records, and moves on. You begin to sense the scope of what you are exploring. The Modrons are not mere mechanical servants of an abstract principle. They are the living manifestation of law itself, nodes in a vast network that extends across the planes, touching every point where order and chaos meet. They share Mechanus with other lawful creatures. The Formians, giant ants organized into hives of ruthless efficiency, have built colonies across numerous cogs, their society almost as regimented as the Modron's own. The inevitables, constructs created to enforce contracts and punish those who break cosmic laws, maintain factories on the cog of Mechanus, producing more of their kind in endless assembly lines. Both species exist alongside the Modrons, agreements dividing Mechanus among its lawful inhabitants. The petitioners who come to Mechanus after death find themselves in a society where success is measured by efficiency and contribution. They must find professions to pay for their upkeep, their fate determined by their success in integrating into the ordered society. Successful petitioners hone their crafts and contemplate the nature of law itself. Those who reach new understanding and enlightenment can gradually improve themselves, potentially becoming clockwork beings, rulers of individual cogs. Petitioners who fail to feed themselves face grim options, They can sell themselves into slavery, or they die. Dead petitioners may be respawned, but if they cannot pay for the service, their essence can be used to create new Modrons, their individuality erased in favor of pure function. It is a harsh existence by the standards of other planes, but to those who value order above all, it represents a form of paradise. The gears of Mechanus continue their eternal rotation. The Modrons maintain their vigil, each one performing its function with unwavering dedication. Primus watches from the center of Regulus, processing countless streams of data, making adjustments, preparing for the moment when the grand cycle completes. That moment approaches. The calculations have been made. The preparations are underway. And when the appointed time arrives, when the gears align in the pattern they have aligned in throughout recorded history, millions of Modrons will gather into formation. They will march forth from Mechanus, leaving their orderly home to venture into planes where chaos reigns. They will face dangers that could destroy them, encounter beings that cannot be predicted, traverse territories where law holds no power. And they will do this because Primus commands it, because the march must happen, because this is their purpose and their function. You stand ready to understand why. The foundation has been laid. The nature of Modrons and their clockwork plane has been revealed. Now the true mystery awaits. What compels these beings of absolute order to leave their perfect realm? What drives them across the great wheel, touching every plane in sequence? What purpose does the march serve, and what happens when it goes wrong? Section 2. The Great Modron March, Origins and Purpose. The phenomenon begins without warning, though it arrives with absolute predictability. Every 289 years, the largest gear in Regulus completes a single rotation. This grand cycle represents the culmination of 17 cycles, each one lasting 17 years, each one marking a full rotation of this titanic wheel at Mechanus's heart. 17 multiplied by 17 equals 289. The number is not arbitrary. 17 represents the number of outer planes in the great wheel cosmology, each one receiving its year of attention, its moment of focus in the grand calculations of Primus. When the grand cycle completes, when all calculations have been made and all preparations finished, the portal in automata flares to life, and thousands upon thousands of Modrons emerge from Mechanus to begin their journey across reality itself. The Great Modron March is not exploration in any sense that mortals would recognize. It is not conquest, though the Modrons will destroy anything in their path rather than deviate from their route. It is not pilgrimage, though some observers have compared it to religious procession. Based on the Modrons' behavior during the march, collecting observations as they traverse each plane, It appears to be reconnaissance at a scale that defies comprehension. A data-gathering operation that spans the outer planes, touches countless civilizations, and observes every significant change that has occurred in the multiverse since the last march completed. The Modrons march because Primus commands them to march. They walk because walking is their function. They observe because observation serves a purpose that only Primus fully understands. You would recognize the beginning of the march if you were present in Automata when it commenced. Automata stands as the gate town to Mechanus, built in the Outlands around the great toothed gear that serves as a permanent portal to the plane of law. This town embodies order in all its forms, both beneficial and oppressive. The streets form perfect grids, blocks separated by roads, all intersecting at precise right angles. Only Modron Way breaks the pattern, a wide thoroughfare that runs directly from the gate to Mechanus toward the town's main entrance. The buildings stand at regulated heights. The citizens follow strict schedules. Everything runs according to rules. And those who cannot adapt to absolute order quickly find themselves expelled from the town entirely. The Council of Order governs automata from their offices near the gate itself. These officials maintain records of every citizen, every transaction, every event that occurs within the town's boundaries. They require permits for nearly every activity. Visitors must fill out paperwork, sometimes taking hours, simply to gain authorization to remain in the town. Those who break the rules face immediate consequences, their crimes cataloged, and their punishments administered with mechanical precision. This is a place where law is not aspiration, but enforcement, where order is not choice, but mandate. And at the center of this ordered existence sits the gate itself, a massive gear laying on its side, rotating constantly without any visible source of power, its teeth clicking through space as reality bends around it. When the march begins, that gate erupts with activity. The rotation accelerates. Light pours from between the teeth, and then they come. Monodrones by the tens of thousands, perfect spheres rolling and hovering in precise formation. Duodrones marching in lockstep, their wedge-shaped bodies moving with mechanical rhythm. Tridrones, quadrones, pentadrones, all emerging in waves, their geometric forms catching the light as they pour through the portal and into automata. The sound is overwhelming at first, the clicking and whirring of millions of mechanical parts, the humming of energy fields, the synchronized footfalls of an army that stretches from the gate to the horizon. But as your ears adjust, you realize the sound carries rhythm. It is not chaos. It is percussion, a beat so complex and so perfectly timed that it creates harmony from machinery. The Modrons do not acknowledge automata's citizens as they march. They do not pause to avoid obstacles or detour around buildings. They march in a perfectly straight line from the gate toward their designated exit point. And anything in that line either moves or is destroyed. Buildings are walked through, their walls crumbling as thousands of metal bodies pass through them without slowing. Objects are trampled underfoot, crushed beneath the weight of the procession. People who fail to move aside are stepped over, walked around only if they fall outside the exact path the Modrons must follow. There is no malice in this destruction. There is no awareness of the damage being caused. There is only the path, the route, the inexorable forward motion that cannot be stopped or diverted. The citizens of Automata have learned to prepare for the march, though the most recent one occurred outside its proper schedule, catching the multiverse unprepared. When the march is expected, buildings along Modron Way are evacuated or reinforced. Possessions are moved to side streets. Citizens gather to watch from safe distances as the procession passes through their town. But when the last march began in the 129th year of Factal Hashkar's reign, approximately 188 years before it was scheduled, chaos erupted. Buildings that should have been empty contained people. Businesses in the Modrons' path had no warning to relocate. The Council of Order found their careful plans meaningless, as the march they had not anticipated destroyed sections of the town that had never been threatened before. From Automata, the march proceeds into the Outlands proper. The Outlands form a vast circular plain, neutral territory where the forces of law and chaos, good and evil, meet without dominating. At the outer edge of this plain sit the gate towns, each one a portal to one of the 16 outer planes that surround the Outlands like spokes on a wheel. The Modrons march clockwise around the Outland's circumference, visiting each gate town in turn. From Automata, they proceed to Fortitude, the gate town to Arcadia. The journey takes weeks of continuous marching, the procession stretching across miles of Outlands terrain, never stopping to rest or resupply, because Modrons require neither rest nor supplies. They simply march day and night without distinction, their pace never varying, their formation never breaking. At Fortitude, the Modrons enter Arcadia through the gate. Arcadia represents lawful good made manifest, a plane where order serves benevolent purposes and structure creates harmony. The Modrons march across Abelio, the first layer of Arcadia, their route taking them through cultivated fields and orderly orchards where everything grows in geometric perfection. The natives of Arcadia, primarily archons and petitioners who value law and goodness, observe the march's passage. Even when the Modrons' path leads directly toward populated areas, the pattern suggests that inhabitants generally evacuate rather than resist, recognizing the futility of attempting to redirect the procession. The march in Arcadia proceeds toward the portal leading to Mount Celestia. Mount Celestia rises as 7 layers of increasing holiness, each mountain peak representing a higher stage of goodness and righteousness. The Modrons enter through Lunia, the first and lowest layer, emerging onto a plain of gentle slopes and silver light. From there, they march toward the portal leading to the next plane, their path taking them through terrain that becomes increasingly difficult to traverse. The march stretches out during this journey, with higher-ranking Modrons maintaining the vanguard, while slower monodrones fall behind, creating a procession that can span entire layers of the mountain. From Mount Celestia, the Modrons proceed through the outlands to Excelsior, the gate town of Bytopia, where they pass through to that plain. Bytopia exists as 2 perfect layers facing each other, Dothian and Shuruk, each one reflecting the other across a space that contains no true separation. The Modrons march through Dothian, moving between communities of gnomes and industrious petitioners who build and create with tireless dedication. Here, the march encounters complications when inhabitants who value both law and creativity attempt intervention, not through violence, but through redirection, building barriers and creating detours to guide the Modrons around their most valuable structures. The Modrons ignore these efforts, walking through barriers as if they do not exist, demonstrating that the march cannot be controlled or managed, only endured. From Bytopia, the march continues its clockwise circuit. The pattern remains consistent throughout, moving through the outlands to each gate town, entering the first layer of each outer plane, then returning to the outlands to proceed to the next gate town. After Bytopia comes Elysium, realm of neutral good, where rivers flow with waters that grant peace. Then the Beastlands, an eternal wilderness where animals possess intelligence. Arborea follows, realm of chaotic good passion and beauty, where forests are conscious. Then Usgard, where warriors fight and feast in eternal glory. The journey grows more perilous as the march enters planes of chaos and evil. Limbo, plane of pure chaos, presents the greatest environmental challenge. Here, reality itself is negotiable, matter forming and dissolving according to the thoughts of those nearby. The Modrons must create bubbles of stability through their ordered nature, pushing back against chaos, forming temporary islands of law in the sea of randomness. But Limbo exacts a terrible toll. Modrons die here in vast numbers, some simply dissolved by chaos, their structured forms unable to maintain cohesion when the fundamental laws of reality cease to apply. Others go rogue, their minds fractured by exposure to pure chaos, their connection to the hierarchy severed. These rogue Modrons stop marching, wandering off the path, their geometric forms still intact, but their purposes lost. After limbo comes pandemonium, where screaming winds drive inhabitants to madness. The Modrons march through tunnels carved by eternal gales, their lack of sanity to lose making them resistant to the plane's primary threat. Then the abyss, realm of infinite layers and chaotic evil, where demons attack in waves, seeing Modrons as resources to be harvested. Thousands of Modrons die in the abyss, destroyed by demon hordes seeking to capture them for study or disassemble them for parts. Carcery follows, the prison plane that traps travelers within its layers. Though the Modrons appear to march free, their connection to the hierarchy stronger than Carcery's binding power. In the gray waste of Hades, where apathy and despair drain all emotion, the Modrons march unchanged because they have no emotions to drain. Gehenna comes next, where mountains float in infinite void, and the Modrons march across volcanic slopes. In the 9 hells of Badr, the devils watch the march with calculating eyes, seeking advantage, but ultimately allowing passage, possibly due to ancient treaties. Through Acheron, the plane of endless war where iron cubes crash together, the Modrons march across these geometric battlefields. Here they would pass near the rebel Modrons led by the corrupted Secundus, though accounts suggest the two groups do not directly interact during the march. Finally, the circuit completes as the march returns to Mechanus, having visited all 17 planes in clockwise order. Throughout this journey, the Modrons are observed by countless beings. Planar scholars travel to witness the march, recording its passage, measuring the size of the procession, counting the different types of Modrons present. Adventurers seek to exploit the march, looking for opportunities to harvest Modron parts for sale or study. Some see the march as threat, organizing defenses to protect their communities from the destruction it brings. Others see it as wonder, marveling at the coordination, the dedication, the sheer impossibility of millions of beings marching in perfect synchronization across realities that should destroy any semblance of order. The casualties of the march are immense. While exact figures are difficult to verify, the losses appear substantial, with many Modrons destroyed by hostile inhabitants, dissolved by chaotic environments, or simply worn down by the endless journey through terrains their bodies were not designed to traverse. But the Modrons do not slow their pace to preserve numbers. They do not retreat when facing overwhelming opposition. They march forward, and as they die, their life force returns to Mechanus. The hierarchy adapts, promotions cascading through the ranks as higher-ranking Modrons fall. A pentadrone is destroyed, and immediately a quadrone transforms, its cubic form shifting into pentagonal configuration, its consciousness expanding to encompass new responsibilities. This quadrone is replaced by a tridrone, which is replaced by a duodrone, which is replaced by a monodrone, maintaining the population through the mechanisms described earlier. Death and replacement occur in continuous cycle. The purpose of the march remains subject to speculation among planar scholars. Primus has never explained why it commands this journey, and Modrons cannot articulate purposes beyond their immediate functions. The most common theory holds that the march is reconnaissance, Primus sending its forces to observe the current state of the outer planes and report changes since the last march. This theory finds support in the Modrons' behavior during the march. They do not conquer territory or establish outposts. They simply march and observe, their sensory organs recording everything they encounter. When the march completes and the survivors return to Mechanus, this would give Primus access to all their accumulated observations, potentially updating its understanding of the multiverse. Another interpretation suggests the march serves to maintain balance between law and chaos. By forcing order to march through chaos, by requiring law to survive in hostile environments, the march demonstrates that law is not fragile, that order can persist even when surrounded by its opposite. This demonstration might prevent chaos from expanding unchecked, showing that law will always return, always endure, always march again in 289 years. From this perspective, the march serves as statement, as declaration that law is eternal regardless of local conditions, proof that Mechanus and its inhabitants cannot be ignored or dismissed. A third possibility, darker and more disturbing, emerges from considering what happened when Tenebris commanded the last march. Perhaps Primus needs the data for calculations beyond mortal comprehension. Perhaps the march is testing something, measuring variables in experiments spanning millennia. Perhaps each march is slightly different, the route adjusted in subtle ways, the timing calibrated, the composition of the procession modified, all to gather specific information about how the multiverse responds to these changes. If this interpretation has merit, then the Modrons are not maintaining law, but serving as instruments in investigations whose goals remain hidden. The last march, the one that occurred 188 years ahead of schedule, supports this darker view. When Tenebris occupied Primus's position, it commanded an early march, disrupting the 289-year cycle that had held constant throughout recorded planar history. This rogue march had different objectives than traditional marches. It searched for the wand of Orcus, the artifact Tenebris needed to complete its resurrection. The Modrons in this march behaved oddly, deviating from established patterns, pursuing goals that seemed disconnected from simple observation. When Tenebris abandoned them after recovering the wand, the march fell apart. Some Modrons went rogue. Others attempted to continue the traditional route without proper leadership. The survivors who eventually made it back to Mechanus found their hierarchy in shambles, their supreme being replaced, their society fractured. This suggests that the march's true purpose depends entirely on Primus's will, that there is no inherent goal beyond whatever Primus decides to pursue. You begin to understand that the Great Modron March is less about the destination and more about the journey itself. It is process made manifest, function elevated to ritual, order demonstrating its own existence through the simple act of movement. The Modrons march because marching is what they do. They observe because observation is their function. They die and are replaced because death and replacement maintain the hierarchy. And every 289 years, when the largest gear completes its rotation, they do it all again, following patterns established over countless cycles, predictable down to the smallest detail, unless something goes catastrophically wrong. The march is clockwork. The march is inevitable. The march is order personified, walking across reality, impossible to stop and difficult to understand. A mystery that reveals itself through repetition, while never explaining why the repetition is necessary. Section 3. The march itself, journey through reality. The procession does not simply walk. It flows like liquid geometry, each Modron maintaining precise distance from those around it. The entire formation moving as a single organism, despite consisting of millions of individual units. When you observe the march from above, perhaps floating on a borrowed celestial mount, or standing atop a mountain overlooking their path, you see patterns within patterns. The monodrones form the outer layers, creating what appears to be a protective shell of spherical bodies. Duodrones are positioned throughout this huge mass of monodrones, so that orders issued from or through the tridrones can be communicated to these lowest ranking Modrons. At the core, the higher ranking Modrons proceed with careful deliberation, pentadrones coordinating sections of the march, with a secundus Modron leading the entire procession. The secundus receives its orders directly from Primus before the march begins, then relays these directives down the chain of command, so that tasks are completed in orderly and timely fashion. The speed of the march appears deceptively slow when watching individual Modrons. Each moves with steady, measured pace, no rushing, no urgency. But the formation never stops. It marches day and night without pause for rest, food, or shelter. When higher-ranking Modrons absolutely require rest, they are carried on litters by numerous monodrones and duodrones, allowing them to sleep while the march continues its forward movement. When you calculate the distance covered over weeks and months of continuous movement, you realize the march travels hundreds of miles across each plane, touching regions that should take adventurers months to traverse, completing the journey in a fraction of the time, because the Modrons never truly stop to reconsider their path. This relentless advance makes the march simultaneously fascinating and terrifying to observe. It is the inevitability of an avalanche combined with the precision of a surgical instrument. Destruction and order merged into a single, unstoppable force. The hierarchy within the march maintains itself through continuous adjustment. When a Modron at any rank is destroyed, the transformation happens instantly. A quadron leading a battalion is dissolved by chaotic energies, and before its brass shell finishes disintegrating, one of the tridrones under its command flashes with brilliant light. The triangular pyramid reshapes itself, faces multiplying, eyes appearing where smooth metal existed moments before, and the new quadron immediately assumes command of the battalion without missing a single step. The promoted tridrone leaves a gap in its own rank, and a duodrone ascends, then a monodrone, with replacement occurring at the lowest level through the mechanisms described earlier. This cascade happens in seconds, the hierarchy healing itself faster than outside observers can track the changes. However, this creates an interesting problem. When a duodrone dies, a monodrone advances to become a duodrone, but that newly promoted duodrone is back on Mechanus, not with the march. This suggests the march gradually loses total numbers despite internal promotions, maintaining rank structure among those who remain. The route the Modrons follow is predetermined before they leave Mechanus. The march visits every outer plane. This much is certain. But scholars who have studied the phenomenon note that the specific path through each plane may target areas of significant planar activity, regions where major events have occurred since the last march. These course adjustments, if they occur, would suggest that Primus is not simply repeating a memorized route, but actively directing the march toward phenomena worth investigating. Though the Modrons themselves cannot articulate such purposes, the natives of each plane react to the march according to their nature. In Arcadia, where the inhabitants value both law and goodness, observation suggests they prepare well in advance when possible, evacuating areas along the predicted route, setting up observation posts at safe distances, recording the march's passage with scholarly detachment. The archons who rule Arcadia appear to view the march as a natural phenomenon worth studying, but not worth fighting. They have likely established protocols over countless marches, knowing when to expect the Modrons and how long the procession will take to traverse their realm. Cities along the route may shut down for days or weeks, businesses close, residents relocate temporarily. And when the last Modron crosses into the next plane, the inhabitants return, survey the damage, and begin repairs. In Mount Celestia, the response carries more complexity because the plane's 7 layers create different challenges for the march. The lower layers, like Lunia, are easily traversed. Gentle slopes and silver sand providing stable footing for millions of marching Modrons. But as the march climbs higher, ascending through Mercuria with its golden light and Venia with its steeper terrain, the procession stretches out over dozens of miles. The slower Modrons, like Monodrones and Duodrones, lag behind, while higher-ranking Modrons forge ahead, creating a column that spans entire layers. The Archons of Mount Celestia allow this passage, though they would likely intervene if the march were to approach the uppermost layers, where the most holy sites exist. Bitopia's response involves more direct interaction, because the gnomes and petitioners who inhabit the twin layers are builders and tinkerers by nature. When they see Modrons marching through their workshops, some cannot resist the urge to study the strange geometric beings. Gnomes follow at safe distances, sketching Modron designs, measuring their movements, attempting to understand the principles that allow beings of pure law to function. A few brave or foolish gnomes have tried to capture individual Modrons, usually targeting stragglers who have fallen behind the main formation. These attempts usually fail because even a single monodrone possesses considerable durability. But occasionally, a gnome succeeds in acquiring a Modron corpse after battle damage destroys one. And these specimens become priceless research materials. In Elysium, where rivers grant peace and nature flourishes with gentle chaos, the Celestials who dwell there value freedom and joy, concepts utterly alien to Modrons. Based on the nature of the plane, some Eladrin may attempt to free Modrons from their hierarchical bonds, speaking to them about choice and liberation, trying to awaken individual consciousness within mechanical minds. These attempts almost never succeed because Modrons lack the cognitive framework to process concepts like freedom. But occasionally, very rarely, a Modron exposed to Elysium's energies experiences something like doubt. Its connection to the hierarchy weakens. It slows its march, looking around as if seeing the plane for the first time. And in that moment of hesitation, it goes rogue, its mind fracturing under the weight of possibilities it was never meant to consider. The beastlands present different challenges because the animals that rule this plane operate on instinct rather than reason. They cannot comprehend what Modrons are, only that the geometric beings smell wrong, move wrong, exist wrong according to every sense that defines prey versus predator. The great cats might initially approach the march as if it were a herd of prey animals, stalking from tall grass, preparing ambushes. But when they attack, their claws scrape off brass without penetrating. Their teeth cannot find purchase on spherical or cubic forms. And the Modrons simply continue marching, ignoring the attacks unless a predator directly blocks the path. The predators learn quickly and leave the Modrons alone, slinking away to find more comprehensible prey. Arborea forces the Modrons to march through forests that may actively resist their presence. The trees here are semi-sentient, their roots able to move, their branches capable of grasping. When Modrons march through an arborean forest, the trees could fight back, not with intelligence, but with instinctual rejection of order in a realm of passionate chaos. The forest becomes hostile terrain, every step contested, but thousands of Modrons march forward, and eventually the forest must yield. The march proceeds, leaving behind a trail that marks its passage. Usgard offers combat of a different nature. This plane hosts eternal warriors who fight and die, and resurrect to fight again. Glory-seeking berserkers and legendary heroes, testing themselves in endless battle. When the march enters Usgard, some warriors might see it as challenge. Bands of warriors could charge the march, axes raised, war cries echoing across the fields. And the Modrons fight back, efficiently and without mercy. Quadrons assess threat levels and deploy appropriate responses. Pentadrones coordinate defenses, ensuring no gap in the formation allows warriors to penetrate to the vulnerable core. The warriors find glory, but likely not victory. Limbo represents the march's greatest trial. This plane of pure chaos has no stable geography, no consistent laws of physics, no reality except what observers believe into temporary existence. The Modrons enter Limbo carrying order with them like shields, their lawful nature creating bubbles of stability in the infinite chaos. Inside these bubbles, matter behaves consistently, gravity functions normally. Cause and effect maintain their relationship. But maintaining these bubbles requires constant effort. The higher-ranking Modrons must concentrate, their minds asserting the supremacy of law over chaos, reality over impossibility. As they march deeper into Limbo, the strain increases, and the Modrons break. In dangerous environments like the lower planes or Limbo, many of them die or disappear. Some Modrons simply dissolve, their brass bodies losing cohesion as chaos overwhelms order on a molecular level. One moment, a duodrone marches in formation. The next moment, it is particles scattering in chaotic wind. Other Modrons go rogue, their minds fractured by exposure to infinite possibility. A tridrone stops marching and spins in place, its three eyes tracking patterns in the chaos. A quadrone walks out of formation and begins building something from chaotic matter, its purpose forgotten, replaced by obsession with creating structure in a place where structure cannot persist. These rogues are lost to the hierarchy, their connections severed, their functions terminated. The march through Limbo takes longer than any other planar crossing, because progress is measured not in distance, but in reality stability. The Modrons must create each step before they can take it. asserting that solid ground exists beneath their feet, that the path ahead is real and traversable. Githzerai monks, the primary inhabitants of limbo, who have learned to shape chaos through discipline and will, sometimes assist the march by stabilizing the route ahead, not necessarily out of kindness, but possibly out of self-interest, as the Modrons' passage disrupts limbo in ways that affect Githzerai settlements miles away. The Githzerai may build temporary roads of stone through the void, paths that will dissolve once the Modrons finish using them, but that provides stable routes during the critical crossing. Pandemonium's screaming winds test Modron durability rather than sanity. The winds here never cease, howling through infinite tunnels carved in solid stone, the sound so loud it drives inhabitants to madness over time. But Modrons have no sanity to lose in the conventional sense. They have no eardrums to rupture. They are minimally affected by sound, regardless of volume. The winds still pose problems, hurricane-force gales that can knock lighter Modrons off their feet or blow them into walls. The march compensates by altering formation, heavier Modrons providing windbreaks for lighter ones, the entire procession advancing in clusters that shield each other from the worst effects. The Abyss claims more Modron lives than any other plane, except possibly Limbo. Here, chaotic evil manifests as infinite layers of torment, each one ruled by demon princes who command armies of fiends. The demons see the Modrons as resources to be harvested, soldiers to be destroyed for entertainment, or mysteries to be studied through dissection. They attack the march in waves, flying demons swooping from above, ground forces charging from ambush. The Modrons fight back with everything they possess. Monodrones may explode when destroyed, their final act a burst of energy that damages nearby attackers. Quadrones coordinate defensive formations that maximize the march's military effectiveness. Pentadrones assess demon tactics and adapt responses, proving that even beings of absolute law can adjust to circumstances during combat. But the Abyss is infinite, and the demons are numberless. For every demon destroyed, more appear. The Modrons cannot win these battles, only survive them long enough to continue marching. Thousands of Modrons die in the Abyss. Some accounts suggest that demon lords keep captured Modron bodies, studying their construction, attempting to replicate their ability to function as perfect soldiers. The march eventually passes through, leaving countless brass corpses in its wake. Carcery tries to trap the marching Modrons within its prison layers, but their connection to the hierarchy appears stronger than the plane's binding magic, where individual travelers would find themselves unable to leave, unable to find portals that should exist. The Modrons march through as if the plane's primary property simply does not apply to them. This immunity frustrates those imprisoned in carcery, who see the march as potential escape route. Some prisoners have tried hiding among the Modron ranks, hoping to pass through portals alongside the procession. These attempts fail because the Modrons maintain perfect awareness of their own numbers. The gray waste of Hades drains emotion and vitality from all who enter, slowly reducing visitors to emotionless husks. The Modrons march through the gray waste unchanged, not because they actively resist its effects, but because they possess no emotions to drain. The waste takes nothing from them because they arrived with nothing it can steal. The natives of Hades, primarily night hags and Yugoloths, watch the march with calculating interest. Yugoloths are mercenaries who might offer their services as guides or guards. The Modrons ignore these offers because they follow predetermined routes and require no external assistance. Gehenna floats as 4 volcanic mountains suspended in infinite void, and the Modrons march across their slopes. When the route requires crossing from one mountain to another, the Modrons may simply walk off the edge and continue marching, their lawful nature potentially asserting that paths exist even in void. How exactly they accomplish these crossings remains unclear to observers, but accomplish them they do. Badr the Nine Hells responds to the march with calculated precision. The devils who rule here value law, though they twist it toward evil purposes. They respect the march as manifestation of order, even as they seek ways to exploit it. Pit fiends position themselves along the march's route, observing, recording, searching for patterns they can use. The archdevils who rule Badr's lairs may have ancient treaties with Primus, agreements that allow the march safe passage, though the details of such treaties have never been publicly revealed. Acheron's iron cubes crash together in eternal warfare, and the Modrons march across these cubes. Here the march passes near the rebel Modrons, led by the corrupted Secundus. According to accounts, this corrupted Secundus has taken approximately 1 million Modrons to Acheron and is planning to attack Regulus and take the mantle of Primus by force. The main march and the rebel force maintain distance, neither side initiating contact during the procession. But the tension suggests that conflict may be inevitable. The casualties throughout the march are devastating. Each time observers see the Modrons as they progress from plane to plane, they notice fewer numbers. One account of a particular march describes the Modrons starting with over 8,000 members and ending with only about 100 surviving Modrons. While this may represent an unusually costly march rather than typical losses, it illustrates the extreme attrition the procession suffers. Millions may begin the journey, but significantly fewer complete it. The survivors, however, are veterans, Modrons who have successfully traversed reality's most hostile environments, witnessed wonders and horrors beyond counting, recorded data that will inform Primus's understanding of the multiverse. The final stages bring the Modrons back toward the Outlands and then to Mechanus, completing the circuit through all the outer planes. By this point, the procession has lost substantial numbers, but these survivors march back through automata, their formation still perfect despite their losses, their pace unchanged despite the unimaginable distances traveled. The citizens of automata watch them return, counting the ranks, noting which types of Modrons suffered heaviest casualties, recording everything for posterity. And then the survivors march through the gate back into Mechanus, disappearing into the orderly realm from which they emerged. The portal closes behind them. The march is complete. The cycle is finished. Automata begins repairs on whatever damage the procession caused during its passage. The other gate towns likewise assess their losses and calculate costs. Across the plains, those who witnessed the march return to their regular lives, some changed by what they saw, others treating the march as just another planar oddity in a multiverse full of impossible phenomena. In Mechanus, the returning Modrons reintegrate into the hierarchy. Their accumulated observations potentially uploaded through the system that connects all Modrons. This would give Primus access to comprehensive data about changes across the planes. The Supreme Modron processes this information, potentially updating its understanding of reality, preparing for the day when the cycles complete once more and the largest gear rotates, signaling the beginning of the next great Modron march. The pattern repeats. The cycle continues. Order marches on, inevitable as clockwork, mysterious as mathematics, eternal as law itself. Section 4. Chaos within order, rogue Modrons and anomalies. Perfection cannot tolerate imperfection, yet imperfection arises even in the most perfectly ordered systems. This is the paradox that haunts Mechanus, the contradiction that undermines everything the Modrons represent. For all their absolute law, for all their unwavering dedication to hierarchy and order, Modrons can break. Not physically, though their bodies can be destroyed easily enough. They break mentally, spiritually, conceptually. They break in ways that should be impossible for beings with no true consciousness, no individual identity, no concept of self separate from function. And when they break, they become something that should not exist. They become rogue. A rogue Modron is order that has experienced chaos and survived the encounter damaged beyond repair. It retains its geometric form, its brass body, its crystalline eyes. It can still move, think, act, but its connection to the hierarchy has been severed, cut like a thread, leaving it isolated in ways that would drive thinking beings to madness. Rogue Modrons remain extremely logical and typically retain lawful neutral alignment, though their behavior becomes unpredictable by modern standards. Imagine suddenly losing your ability to receive commands from superiors you have obeyed since the moment of your creation. Imagine your purpose vanishing, your function becoming meaningless, your entire reason for existence dissolving, while you remain conscious enough to notice the absence. This is what happens to a rogue Modron, and the fact that it continues functioning afterward is perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the phenomenon. The creation of rogue Modrons occurs through multiple mechanisms, all involving exposure to forces that damage the Modron's lawful nature without destroying it entirely. Modrons can go rogue from being exposed to too much chaotic energy, such as during extended time in limbo or other chaotic planes. Some theorize that even Modrons experience stress and wear, like any machine, and when tested too far, they can malfunction in ways that sever their connection to the hierarchy. During the march through limbo, exposure to raw elemental chaos causes Modrons to fracture. The break happens instantly. One moment, a tridrone marches in perfect synchronization with its fellows. The next moment it stops, its three eyes darting randomly, tracking movements in the chaos that its companions cannot perceive. It takes a step to the left, breaking formation. And in that moment of deviation, the hierarchy recognizes corruption and severs the connection, cutting the rogue loose rather than risking contamination spreading through the system. Some accounts suggest that chaos is not the only cause. Modrons exposed to strong emotion for extended periods, particularly in places like Arborea, where passion infuses the very air, or Elysium, where joy and freedom are fundamental principles, may begin to develop something resembling feelings, emotional responses that have no place in mechanical consciousness. A Modron exposed to these energies might pause, experiencing something it has no framework to understand. When it pulls back, it is changed. The hierarchy senses the change and reacts, severing the connection to preserve the integrity of the network. Physical damage can also create rogues, though this appears less common. When a Modron suffers severe but non-lethal injury, particularly damage to the areas housing its connection to the system, it might survive, but find itself cut off from the hierarchy. These rogues are perhaps the most tragic because they retain full memory of their functions, full understanding of what they are supposed to do, but lack the ability to receive commands or coordinate with other Modrons. According to some sources, it is more common for base Modrons to go rogue because higher-ranking Modrons possess greater complexity. However, all ranks can be infected by chaotic energy over time, and surely all ranks can potentially go rogue given sufficient exposure. Modrons of the quadron rank or higher possess enough intelligence to use the bureaucracy of their society to their advantage, potentially hiding their rogue status longer than lower-ranking Modrons. When a Modron goes rogue, other Modrons are tasked with hunting them down. A squad of pentadrones will discover the rogue and will be quick to dispatch them. Rogues that are caught are typically destroyed, their life force returning to where all Modron life comes from and returns to upon destruction. Some accounts suggest this process turns rogues into creatures resembling quadrones through unknown mechanisms. Some speculate that Primus approves of this hunting, viewing rogues as corrupted units that must be purged. The corrupted Secundus, who led approximately 1 million Modrons to Acheron, represents rogue behavior on a scale unprecedented in recorded history. When Tenebris occupied Primus's position within the energy pool, it tainted everything it touched. The 4 Secundus Modrons who served during this period were exposed to pure evil masquerading as law, chaos disguised as order. When Tenebris departed, and one of the Secundus ascended to become the new Primus, the tainted Secundus refused to accept this transition. The evil within Tenebris left a taint within the Modrons, and one Secundus objected to the advancement of the rightful Primus to leadership. This corrupted Secundus claimed that the ascension was illegitimate, that it alone possessed the right to become Primus. This corrupted Secundus convinced 1 million subordinate Modrons to follow it into exile, proceeding to Acheron, where it promised to build military might, so it could take Regulus by force and claim the mantle of Primus itself. This is not mere malfunction. This represents ego, ambition, concepts that should not exist in modern consciousness. This schism divided Modron power, leaving both factions weaker than the unified whole had been. The corrupted Secundus and its army remain in Acheron, building weapons, training for war, preparing to invade Regulus. Whether this division is permanent or temporary, whether the corrupted Secundus will be destroyed or somehow redeemed, these questions remain unanswered. But the threat is real, and it represents existential danger to Mechanus itself, because if these rebels succeed in overthrowing the current Primus, they would install a corrupted entity at the apex of the hierarchy. Individual rogue Modrons have become known across the plains, their stories told in taverns and recorded in scholarly texts. One such rogue, a quadron named Nordum Whistleclick, achieved particular notoriety. Nordum is a rogue quadron from the plane of Mechanus, whose function became altered after it was exposed to the raw chaos of Limbo. During a Modron march with destination Limbo, though the original destination was Mechanus, Nordum became lost for reasons unknown. New parameters dictated by a superior required it to shape matter of the plane to test a hypothesis. And Nordum constructed something called the Rubicon Dungeon. While separated from what Nordum calls the Modron hive mind, it remains a mechanical thinker, though its altered function is responsible for its chaotic neutral alignment. Nordum carries a pair of crossbows in its forearms, weapons it modified itself and treats with unusual attachment. These crossbows are described as gear spirits, creatures from Mechanus that tend the great clockwork gears and can turn themselves into tools or mechanical devices. The gear spirits have the ability to create crossbow bolts on demand, producing an infinite supply. Tales exist of gear spirits that leave the great gears of Mechanus for a while to sample the planes beyond their own. And Nordum's 2 crossbows apparently caught this wanderlust, now accompanying the rogue Modron and attacking any hostile creature they see. Nordum learned to communicate differently than standard Modrons, using few verbs and many colons and equal signs, but engaging in actual conversation rather than simply transmitting data. It developed something resembling personality, even naming its crossbows and treating them as companions. This behavior is completely antithetical to Modron nature, yet Nordum persists in it, creating meaning from choice rather than deriving meaning from function. When asked where it sleeps, Nordum replied that it sleeps in a drawer, suggesting it has adapted to living in ways no proper Modron would consider. Other rogue Modrons form communities in places like Sigil, the city of doors that sits at the center of the Outlands. These rogues gather together, supporting each other, creating new purpose from the wreckage of their severed functions. They develop their own cultures, creating rules and hierarchies that mirror their lost connection to Mechanus, while incorporating elements of free will and choice that proper Modrons cannot possess. Rogue Modrons teach each other how to survive in a multiverse that was not designed for beings like them. They share information about which planes are safe, which cities tolerate their presence, which types of work they can perform to sustain themselves. Some rogues become craftsmen, their precise nature making them excellent artisans. Others become guards or mercenaries, their combat capabilities valuable to those who can afford to hire them. A few become scholars, studying magic or philosophy, attempting to understand what they have become and why. These rogues create lives for themselves that proper Modrons could never imagine, demonstrating that even beings designed for pure function can adapt when circumstances sever them from their intended purposes. The question of why rogues occur at all troubles those who study modern society. In a perfect system, errors should not exist. In absolute order, chaos should have no entry point. Yet rogues continue appearing with every march, proving that the Modron hierarchy contains some fundamental vulnerability. Some theorists suggest this vulnerability might be intentional, a safety valve built into the system. If all Modrons were perfectly incorruptible, perfectly integrated into the hierarchy, then a single point of failure like Tenebrus's infiltration could corrupt the entire race irreversibly. By allowing rogues to exist, by permitting Modrons to break free when exposed to sufficient chaos, the system maintains a form of diversity. Not every Modron shares the same experiences. Not every Modron processes information identically. This variation, minimal as it is, might be the only thing preventing total systemic failure. Another interpretation holds that rogues represent evolutionary pressure, the multiverse's way of testing whether pure law can adapt to chaotic conditions. Every rogue represents a data point, evidence about how order responds when chaos intrudes. Based on the fact that Primus appears to study rather than simply destroy all rogues immediately, it could imply that the Supreme Modron is learning from their development, understanding how law can be corrupted so that future Modrons can be designed to resist such corruption more effectively. This would suggest a long game, Primus playing out strategies across millennia, each march producing new rogues, each rogue teaching lessons that will be incorporated into whatever process creates new Modrons. A darker interpretation suggests that rogues might serve as unintentional agents spreading order. A rogue Modron entering a society brings law with it, even damaged law. Rogues often become productive members of whatever communities accept them, working with dedication, following rules, maintaining schedules. They spread law through example, demonstrating that order is beneficial even in chaotic environments. Whether this is intentional strategy or unintended consequence remains unclear, but the effect is the same. The last march that occurred approximately 188 years ahead of schedule demonstrated how catastrophically wrong the system can go when corrupted at the highest level. When Tenebris commanded the early march, it perverted every aspect of the tradition. The route changed, directing Modrons toward locations relevant to Tenebris's search for the Wand of Orcus, rather than toward areas of planar significance. The behavior changed, Modrons actively seeking specific objects, rather than passively observing everything. The purpose changed, transformation from reconnaissance to retrieval mission, order serving chaos, law becoming tool of evil. And when Tenebris abandoned the march after recovering the wand, the resulting confusion created more rogues than any previous march in history. Thousands of Modrons found themselves without direction, their commands suddenly absent, their leader simply gone. Some adapted, many did not. The plains still contain rogues from that disaster, geometric beings wandering aimlessly, waiting for commands that will never arrive, or slowly learning to function without purpose beyond what they create for themselves. The aftermath nearly destroyed Modron society. The new Primus faced immediate crisis, hierarchy in shambles, approximately 1 million Modrons following a corrupted Secundus into exile, countless others gone rogue, and trust in the system shattered. The recovery took decades, slowly rebuilding the hierarchy, reestablishing protocols, restoring function after Tenebrous' contamination. Even now, the effects persist. The rebel army in Acheron grows stronger. Rogues continue appearing in unexpected locations. And the next true march, when it occurs according to the proper 289-year cycle, will carry the weight of that disaster. The relationship between order and chaos is not opposition, but something more complex. This is the lesson rogues teach through their existence. Order requires chaos to define itself against. Chaos requires order to corrupt. Neither can exist in isolation. The Modrons represent absolute law, but their ability to become rogues proves that absolute law cannot maintain itself without acknowledging chaos's existence. When a Modron goes rogue, it does not become chaotic in the sense of embracing randomness. It becomes something between order and chaos, a being that understands structure, but no longer follows the singular structure it was designed for. You encounter a rogue Modron in Sigil, standing in a marketplace, interacting with customers in ways proper Modrons never would. This rogue has learned to explain rather than command, learned to share knowledge rather than simply execute functions. When asked questions, it pauses, considering, then responds with carefully chosen words rather than mechanical transmissions of pure data. This is adaptation. This is learning. This is everything Modrons were designed never to do. And this rogue does it because its connection to restriction has been severed, freeing it to become something new while remaining something old. The mystery of rogue Modrons is ultimately the mystery of consciousness itself. Can beings created without souls develop souls through experience? Can minds designed for pure function evolve toward self-awareness? Can order learn to appreciate chaos without being destroyed by it? The rogues suggest yes. Though their existence is painful, their adaptation incomplete, their transformation ongoing. They are experiments that never intended to begin, subjects studying themselves, questions without answers walking through the planes in geometric forms, seeking purpose in a multiverse that never prepared places for them. The Great Modron March will create more rogues. This is inevitable. Every time millions of Modrons traverse reality, some will break. Some will see too much, experience too much, process information their minds cannot categorize. They will stop marching. They will look around, confused, aware for the first time that looking around is choice. And in that moment, they will cease being tools and become beings, flawed and damaged and lost, but undeniably individual. The multiverse will accommodate them as it accommodates everything, finding niches where broken Modrons can exist, creating communities where order and chaos blend. And the cycle repeats, inevitable as law, unpredictable as chaos, eternal as the gears of Mechanus turning forever in their perfect, flawed dance. Section 5. The Clockwork Cosmos, Life Between Marches and Ultimate Purpose. The silence between marches is not truly silence, but rather the absence of the extraordinary. Mechanus continues functioning during the centuries when Modrons remain within their home plane, the gears turning as they always have, the hierarchy maintaining operations that never cease regardless of whether millions march across the outer planes or remain at their designated posts. Life, if you can call modern existence life, proceeds with the same mechanical precision during these quiet centuries as it does during the chaos of the march. Perhaps more so, because without the disruption of planar travel and combat, every Modron can dedicate itself fully to its assigned function. And those functions collectively maintain not just a society, but an entire plane of existence. You observe Mechanus during one of these quiet periods, standing on the surface of a gear that stretches to the horizon in every direction. The cog rotates slowly beneath your feet, though you perceive no sensation of movement because gravity orients toward the surface, making the rotation feel like stillness. Above you, another massive gear turns in the opposite direction, its teeth meshing with the cog you stand upon, the mechanical interaction producing a deep grinding sound that reverberates through the metal and into your bones. This sound never stops. It has persisted since the plane's creation, whenever that was, and will continue until the multiverse itself ends. If endings are even possible for something as fundamental as Mechanus. Monodrones by the thousands roll across the gear's surface, each one following predetermined routes, performing maintenance tasks that keep the plane functioning. You watch as a group of spherical Modrons approaches a section where two smaller gears mesh with the main cog. They produce tools from compartments in their brass bodies, instruments designed for measuring and adjusting, and begin examining the gear teeth with methodical precision. One monodrone measures the gap between teeth. Another inspects the surface for wear. A third applies lubricant that gleams like quicksilver, reducing friction that you cannot perceive, but that the Modrons detect through their superior sensors. This maintenance occurs continuously across all of Mechanus. Millions of monodrones, ensuring that the infinite machinery never falters, never slows, never develops the slightest imperfection that might compound over millennia into actual malfunction. The hierarchy operates differently during non-march periods. Without the urgency of traversing hostile planes or gathering reconnaissance, the Modrons settle into administrative routines that would bore most sentient beings to catatonia, but that Modrons find perfectly fulfilling. Duodrones coordinate monodrone work teams, ensuring that maintenance schedules are followed, that no gear receives attention too frequently or too rarely. Tridrones manage larger sections, balancing resource allocation across multiple maintenance operations. Quadrones handle logistics, moving supplies between storage facilities and work sites, calculating optimal routes that minimize travel time while maximizing efficiency. Pentadrones oversee entire cogs, their 5 eyes monitoring thousands of subordinates, detecting patterns that indicate when procedures need adjustment. The higher ranks of the hierarchy engage in planning and analysis that spans decades or centuries. Decaton Modrons review data collected during the last march, processing observations, identifying trends. Nonatone Modrons serve as inspectors, traveling between cogs to ensure that all operations meet standards, investigating any anomalies or deviations from established protocols. Octon Modrons coordinate between different regions of Regulus, the 64-cog domain where Primus resides and most Modrons operate, ensuring that the actions of one region do not interfere with another's functions. The 4 Secundus Modrons, at least those who remained loyal after Tenebrus's infiltration, maintain direct communication with Primus, serving as its voice when it addresses the Modron population, serving as its eyes when it needs detailed reports on specific situations. But Mechanus is not solely inhabited by Modrons. The plane's reputation for absolute law attracts other beings who value order, creating a diverse, if regimented population. The Formians represent the most significant non-Modron presence on Mechanus. These giant ants, organized into hives of ruthless efficiency, have built colonies across numerous cogs, their society almost as regimented as the Modrons' own. The Formians are an ant-like race with humanoid torsos and arms, not unlike an invertebrate centaur. They operate under a hive queen structure, each queen commanding thousands of workers, warriors, and taskmasters through psychic bonds that create unity of purpose without requiring the mechanical hierarchy the Modrons employ. The relationship between Formians and Modrons appears complex, neither alliance nor conflict, but something closer to mutual tolerance. Both species understand that Mechanus is vast enough to accommodate multiple ordered societies, and the hierarchies of their strict, hive-like societies make sense as native inhabitants of this plane of absolute law. The inevitables constitute another major presence on Mechanus, particularly on the cog of Numanus, where their factories produce new units in endless assembly lines. Inevitables are constructs created to enforce specific types of cosmic law, each variety designed to punish a particular category of transgression. Marots hunt those who try to cheat death through unnatural means. Kaliarets pursue those who break contracts and oaths. Zelicots track fugitives who escape legal justice. Unlike Modrons, inevitables are not born from the plane itself, but manufactured, assembled from raw materials according to precise specifications, then imbued with purpose through rituals that combine magic and mathematics. Their factories operate constantly, producing replacements for inevitables destroyed while pursuing their quarries across the plains. The Modrons appear to tolerate this industrial presence because inevitables serve law, and serving law is purpose enough to justify existence on Mechanus. Petitioners arrive in Mechanus after death, souls drawn to the plane because their alignment and beliefs match its lawful, neutral character. These petitioners must adapt quickly or perish because Mechanus offers no charity, no support systems for those unable to contribute. New arrivals find themselves in the town of Automata or in smaller settlements scattered across various cogs, and they must immediately find professions that allow them to pay for their upkeep. Petitioners must find a profession to sustain themselves, and their fate is determined by their success in this. Those with skills become craftsmen, producing goods that Modrons and Formians require. Those with strength become laborers, assisting with maintenance tasks. Those with intelligence become administrators, handling paperwork and records that even Modrons acknowledge require flexibility. Successful petitioners thrive, gradually transforming through years or centuries of dedicated service. Those that reach new understanding and enlightenment can gradually cast off the bonds of flesh to improve their bodies and become clockworks, the rulers of each cog. These clockwork beings represent the pinnacle of what a lawful soul can achieve on Mechanus. Transformation from flesh to mechanism, from mortal to something approaching the eternal precision of the plane itself. Unsuccessful petitioners face harsh reality. Petitioners who fail to even feed themselves can sell themselves to slavery or die. Dead petitioners are respawned by the machine, but if they cannot pay for the service, they are ground down into Modrons. Their individuality is erased, their memories dissolved, their consciousness absorbed, until nothing of the original person remains, except perhaps a few atoms of brass in a sphere that rolls endlessly across the gears. This fate horrifies visitors from other planes, but to those who value order above all, it represents efficient recycling, making use of available resources rather than allowing them to go to waste. The petitioners of Mechanus can take on many shapes, but inside they are almost all alike. They are frighteningly honest, for to lie is to invite chaos. They are exceedingly, some might say notoriously, literal, for to interpret is to invite chaos. Indeed, some petitioners are so afraid of misinterpreting a command because of vagaries in language that they simply do not take instruction. Life in Mechanus is a constant test of their understanding of law and order, or so they believe. The infinite gears of Mechanus represent something more than simple machinery. Each gear meshes with others, creating networks of interaction that span the entire plane. Small gears connect to larger gears, which connect to larger still. The ratios and relationships forming mathematical patterns of stunning complexity. The cogs seem to be engaged in a calculation so vast that no deity can fathom its purpose. Some planar scholars believe these patterns encode meaning, that the arrangement of gears represents a cosmic equation being solved through physical demonstration. The gears are not decoration or setting. They might be calculation made manifest, variables in functions whose outputs could determine fundamental aspects of law in the multiverse. If this interpretation has merit, then every rotation has significance. Every meshing of teeth represents an operation, an addition or multiplication, or more exotic mathematical process. The grand cycle that completes every 289 years marks the conclusion of one phase of the calculation, a major result that would then inform the next phase. The march itself becomes part of the calculation data collection that provides new input, allowing refinement of models of reality. The Modrons would not be citizens of Mechanus, but components, moving parts in a machine so vast its full scope exceeds mortal comprehension. You are standing not on a plane, but inside something like a computer, a mechanical calculation engine the size of infinity, processing questions about the nature of law itself. Primus's ultimate purpose remains one of the multiverse's great mysteries. Why does it coordinate Modrons? Why command marches every 289 years? Why maintain absolute order when the rest of reality tolerates or embraces chaos? The simplest explanation is that Primus has no purpose beyond its own nature. That asking why Primus pursues law is like asking why fire burns or water flows downhill. It is what it is, and it does what it does, and no deeper meaning exists behind the behavior. This explanation satisfies those who see the multiverse as fundamentally purposeless. Reality as a collection of forces and entities acting according to their natures, without any grand design or ultimate goal. But others believe Primus is working towards something specific, a goal it has pursued since its creation or emergence. According to some accounts, within what passes for its consciousness, Primus maintains the orrery, a grand model of the multiverse that tracks the movements of planes, the actions of gods, the rise and fall of civilizations. The Great Modron March, an event that occurs every grand cycle, or 289 years, is widely believed to be a means of gathering information or recalibration of this orrery, to to ensure its continued accuracy. When the march completes and the survivors return to Mechanus, reporting on what they have witnessed, this would give Primus access to updated observations about the current state of the outer planes, allowing it to maintain an accurate model of reality. One theory holds that Primus is attempting to bring order to the entire multiverse, not through conquest, but through patient example. Every march demonstrates that law can survive in chaos. Every Modron that maintains its function, despite hostile environments, proves order's viability. Over countless cycles, over millions of years, this demonstration might gradually shift the balance, convincing more beings that law is preferable to chaos, that order enables achievement while disorder ensures destruction. From this perspective, Primus plays an infinite game, willing to spend eons pursuing incremental change, knowing that civilizations rise and fall, but the gears of Mechanus turn forever. Another interpretation suggests Primus is defending against something, maintaining order as a bulwark against threats the rest of the multiverse does not perceive or understand. Based on the constant need for maintenance and vigilance, one could infer that pure chaos, if allowed to spread unchecked, might eventually unmake reality itself, dissolving the structures that allow matter to exist, consciousness to emerge, life to flourish. The Modrons could be soldiers in a war most beings do not realize is being fought, holding the line against entropy disguised as freedom, protecting the multiverse from liberation that would actually be annihilation. From this perspective, every march is reconnaissance in an eternal conflict, monitoring chaos's expansion, calculating whether law is winning or losing, adjusting strategies to maintain necessary balance. The darkest theories paint Primus as something alien and potentially hostile to life, as mortals understand it. These theories note that perfect order is indistinguishable from stasis, that absolute law allows no growth, no change, no evolution. If Primus succeeded in bringing complete order to the multiverse, the result would be a frozen cosmos where nothing ever happened, because everything would already be predetermined, calculated, set in eternal patterns. Life requires chaos, at least in small doses. Free will demands unpredictability. Consciousness emerges from complexity, and complexity requires elements of randomness. A perfectly ordered multiverse would be dead, or worse, trapped in meaningless repetition, every being performing assigned functions forever without possibility of deviation or development. But Primus allows rogues to exist. This single fact undermines the darkest theories. If Primus truly sought perfect order, it would eliminate every source of chaos, including the vulnerability that creates rogues. Instead, according to some speculation, Primus is known to engage in a variety of experimentations to better understand those matters, normally beyond its purview, including at least one complex constructed within the depths of limbo, meant to better understand the ways of adventurers. Some believe that rogue Modrons are another example of its experimentations. Bits of chaos purposefully allowed within the energy pool that its Modrons will rebel and pursue non-Modron ways. This suggests awareness that absolute order might be neither possible nor desirable, that the goal could be balance rather than domination, coexistence rather than victory. The relationship between law and the multiverse might be symbiotic rather than antagonistic. Law provides framework, the underlying rules that make consistent reality possible. Without law, every moment would be unique and isolated, past providing no guidance for future, experience teaching nothing because patterns would not repeat. But law alone creates stagnation. Without chaos to introduce variation, to create unexpected outcomes, to generate the complexity from which consciousness emerges, the multiverse would be as dead as a mathematical proof, true but meaningless. The Modrons exist at the intersection of these forces, beings of pure law who confront chaos regularly, survive it, adapt to it in limited ways through the creation of rogues, and return home carrying information about the interaction between opposites. You realize that understanding the Great Modron March means understanding that some mysteries are meant to remain unsolved. Some questions are more valuable than their answers. Why do Modrons march? Because Primus commands it. Why does Primus command it? Because maintaining order requires constant action, vigilance that never sleeps, dedication that spans millennia. The march is ritual without religion, pattern without purpose beyond the pattern itself, order demonstrating its own existence to a multiverse that constantly threatens to forget that rules exist. Every 289 years, the gears align. The grand cycle completes, and millions of geometric beings emerge from their mechanical home to walk across reality, witnessing everything, judging nothing, recording data that feeds into calculations whose final results may not be known for eons. The next march approaches, or has recently passed, time being negotiable from perspectives beyond mortality. The gears continue turning. The Modrons maintain their vigil. Primus calculates in its location at the center of Regulus, processing observations from the last march, planning for the next, existing in eternal present, where past and future are just variables in equations too complex for mortal minds. The Formians tend their hives. The inevitables manufacture more enforcers. The petitioners work and transform or fail, and disappear into the system that grinds them down. Life, order, law, all proceeding according to patterns that have held since the beginning and will hold until the ending, if endings come. And somewhere in sigil, A rogue quadrone builds mechanical toys for children, each toy a perfect geometric solid that rolls and clicks and demonstrates principles of order through play. The rogue teaches a child how gears mesh, how ratios determine rotation speeds, how mathematics can be beautiful when rendered in brass and motion. The child laughs, delighted by the toy, unaware that this broken Modron is spreading law through kindness, demonstrating order through generosity, proving that even chaos can benefit from structure when structure serves joy rather than merely serving itself. This is the future the march creates, not through conquest, but through existence, not through force, but through example. Law and chaos, order and freedom, Modrons and mortals, all coexisting in the great machine that is reality, each playing roles in calculations whose ultimate purposes may forever remain mysteries. Beautiful because they are unsolved, meaningful because they continue. The gears turn. The march will come again. And you, having witnessed this impossible phenomenon, having understood the geometric beings who embody law itself, having walked in thought, if not in body, alongside millions of Modrons as they traverse the plains, you carry forward the knowledge that order is possible, that chaos is survivable, that the multiverse is vast enough to contain both, and that somewhere in Mechanus, Primus calculates the next cycle, preparing for the moment when 17 times 17 years complete once more, and the great Modron march begins again. Inevitable as clockwork, mysterious as consciousness, eternal as the question, why does order march through chaos? Because it must. Because it can. Because the gears demand motion, and motion demands purpose. And purpose is what we make of patterns we do not fully comprehend. If you found yourself fascinated by the infinite complexity of the great Modron march, by the geometric beings who embody law, by the clockwork cosmos that turns forever in perfect precision, then please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support allows deep explorations of the multiverse's greatest mysteries to continue, diving into lore that spans planes and centuries, uncovering the patterns beneath reality's surface. Until next time, may your journeys through the planes be ordered when you need structure, chaotic when you need freedom, and always filled with the wonder that comes from witnessing impossibilities made manifest.